Okay, not sure how this vlog will turn out in terms of quality, but anyway, welcome to my first ever vlog. The first vlog is gonna cover, I don't know how long it's gonna be, but it's gonna cover just two things that are both inherently related to each other. The first is a game called Homefront, developed by Chaos Studios and published by the late THQ. Actually, both of them are late. They're both down under. And the second thing that we're talking about in general is North Korea. Sorry if you see the glare on my glasses lens. The TV's on right now. I should probably turn it off. Okay, it looks good. So yeah, let's talk, well, I will talk about Homefront and North Korea just for a little bit, just in relation to each other, because I love North Korean culture. Now, let me start off by saying, just because I love North Korean culture doesn't mean I love communism. What I mean by loving North Korean culture is that they have a very astute ideology with them that's known as juchi. And juchi is just basically the idea of self-reliance, that you shouldn't have to rely on other people to help get things done. As long as you're under the care of the great leader, which to them is Kim Il-sung, or anyone else who is in power, like Kim Jong-il or Kim Jong-un, as long as you're under the guidance of those people and you don't rely on anyone else other than yourself, you're going to be okay with life. Now, obviously, with North Korea, that's not really the case. They're having some of the worst famines that the world has ever experienced. They regularly get oppressed by their own government, the population does, with the concentration camps and the general tightness on law in the country. And in general, it doesn't leave a lot open for opinions, for lack of a better term. With the juchi ideology, you either follow one path or you're going to get sent straight to a camp. Simple as that. In that regard, for example, if you were a Christian, you would immediately be sent to a total control zone, which is, to put in relative terms, you're never ever going to leave there ever the rest of your life. Once you get sent to a total control zone, you're there for life. An example of that would be in Yodok. Yodok is one of the most well-known concentration camps. It's pretty infamous. I read a book about it called The Aquariums of Pyongyang, where a man by the name of Kang Chol-hwan spent a decade of his life in a concentration camp, and he did get out with his family. He served his sentence eventually and was allowed to leave, but he wasn't supposed to speak of it. He wasn't supposed to bring about any hint of its existence to the general public. Now, there's two parts of that camp. The total control zone, as I mentioned before, and the second one is, I can't remember the specific name of it, but it's a sort of a re-education area. You still get treated like shit there. Actually, you probably get treated less than shit. As far as I know, whenever I read The Aquariums of Pyongyang, you're treated less than flies. So it's pretty, to put it mildly, it's pretty bad in those camps, and they're still going on today. So yeah, there's no other opinions allowed with the juchi ideology. But through this, we get to see capitalism at work in North Korea. For example, the black markets. We see all sorts of items in the black markets that are getting traded. We see DVDs of Hollywood movies like Titanic and that kind of thing. We see fruit that North Korea has never ever seen before, like pineapples. I read a book called Nothing to Envy, Ordinary Lives in North Korea, where the book followed 7 people, and I'm pretty sure it was 7 people, it was around that number. One of the people recalled seeing a pineapple for the first time, and she had never ever seen a pineapple in her life. And there were a couple other foods there too that looked really weird, like bananas and mangoes and stuff like that. For North Korea, they were used to eating rice. Rice is considered a luxury food in North Korea. So it's pretty interesting to see capitalism at work in North Korea. Even though Kim Jong-il has, whenever he was alive, he went back and forth between allowing markets to be present in North Korea, it's pretty interesting to still see it at work despite such oppression. And at this rate, that's pretty much the only reason most of the population are surviving, is through the black markets. Now, how does that conflict with the Juche ideology? Well, it certainly doesn't appeal to self-reliance in that regard. With Juche ideology, it's basically the very antithesis of capitalism. If you notice on YouTube, you'll see all sorts of videos of North Koreans where they keep referring to the Americans as imperialists. Now, I don't 100% remember what imperialists are, but I'm pretty sure that has something to do with capitalism. It's been a while since I've taken sociology. So, I'm sorry if this discussion is really bland so far. It's just I wanted to basically... It's more of a rant than anything else, because my vlogs are related to things that I've done in my life. Obviously, that's why it's called a vlog. But I just love talking about North Korea, and I love reading about North Korea just because they're one of the most oddball countries in the world. They're basically the only communist state of power left in the world, except for maybe remnants of communism in Russia and in China as well. I'm sure there's some remnants of communism in those places, even though those two places do have certain relations with each other today. Positive relations, I'll say. Now, I'm not talking about North Korea for no reason. I'm talking about North Korea because I started and I finished a game today called Homefront. Now, what Homefront is basically the video game version of Red Dawn, the movie. If you haven't seen Red Dawn, the movie, and by Red Dawn I mean the remake of Red Dawn. The remake has North Koreans in it. The original has Russians. So the remake of Red Dawn focuses on the North Koreans invading the United States and basically taking over. That's it. That's the plot of the movie. With the game, it's fleshed out way more. Based on the introduction and all the collectibles you find in the game. There's all sorts of stuff like the Saudi Arabia and Iraq conflict. That's one of them. The hike in gas prices. That's another one. Stock markets crashing, and that's another one. Corporations running out of merchandise to sell to people, and while that merchandise gets increased in price, that's another factor as well. There's so many factors that come together, and of course it focuses on Kim Jong-il and Kim Jong-un itself. Now, coincidentally, Homefront was released at a time where there was 2 coincidences. One, Kim Jong-il died. Now, they didn't expect, whenever Chaos Studios was making this game, they didn't expect that Kim Jong-il would die around the time that the game released. My finger's in front of my mouth. So, that was one thing. And the second thing, I'm trying to remember it. It was the nuclear test. They didn't count on a nuclear test occurring I can't remember if it was either that month the game released or sometime before or after it, but around that general area was when North Korea conducted a second nuclear test. Pretty sure it was the second one. So yeah, there's two coincidences that actually helped in the game's favor, even though it wasn't intentional at all to highlight such things. It was just purely coincidental, maybe even accidental, if you will. So, in terms of exposition, Homefront does things really well. The main problem with Homefront as a whole is that even though it still feels plausible to a certain degree, it's just not possible whatsoever. Obviously, maybe not so obviously, but for those of you who have seen videos of North Korea, whether it's in Kim Il-sung Square or the general city, if you've seen people post in travel documentaries, you'll see people who are filming citizens. Now, oh my goodness, I just forgot what track I was on. That's a good way to start a vlog. Losing track of yourself whenever you're speaking. Thinking. North Korea doesn't really have a very good power system. It doesn't. Like, that's what I was trying to get to. If you've seen videos on North Korea, you'll notice, for example, that they pull artillery missiles with their tractors. Tractors. That's pretty embarrassing to see. Another thing, you'll see there's a picture floating around on the internet where Kim Jong-un is basically looking very serious-faced, and he's holding up a floppy disk like this. This is bad stuff. Like, it's just so embarrassing. And you'll notice in a lot of photos that Kim Jong-un is in, all his generals are around him. They're all looking over his shoulder. Kim Jong-un is staring out in the distance like that, sometimes with a smile on his face. And he'll just be doing all sorts of weird things. He might be looking out into the horizon like that, or he might be test firing a gun, for example. He'll be doing all sorts of weird stuff, and his generals are around him 24/7. It really makes me think that his generals are doing all the work for him, as opposed to Kim Jong-un, based on a few things, the most notable of which Dennis Rodman, the basketball star, visiting North Korea twice. It's obvious that Kim Jong-un has connections outside of North Korea based on his education in Switzerland. So, but with that being said, North Korea doesn't have the capacity to invade the United States of America. Of course, I mentioned their pathetic power system, which includes the electricity, the vehicles. Really, the only thing they got going for is their army. That's it. They don't feed their people. They force them to eat grass out in the fields, grow their own vegetables, find whatever they can on the black market, etc. 99% of their money goes towards the military. That's just the way it goes. And what you end up having with that is you have a demoralized population. Now, the funny thing is, if you hear a lot of North Korean music on YouTube, it's very triumphant. It has a very triumphant feel to it. You'll see a lot of North Korean soldiers in YouTube videos marching in lockstep with their feet moving at the exact same position. Their arms are like right to their sides like this, or they're holding their guns. They look very menacing, but the truth of the matter is their height over the last few decades have gone down several inches because of the famine. They went from being like yay high back in the 80s to being yay high like right now. Their height has stunted because they just don't have any food to support themselves. Now, despite what the communist regime would have you believe, if you've read the books, and I'm not assuming that you've read any of the books, I'm just talking out of my mouth, but if you've read the books, like Nothing to Envy, The Aquariums of Pyongyang, or even the most recently released book, Escape from Camp 14, if you've read any of those books, you know that the population secretly doesn't give a shit about Kim Jong-un. They don't say anything, God forbid. They don't say anything at all. Otherwise, they're going to get straight to the labor camp you go. It's like what George Carlin said. The only right they have? Right this way. So, really? No. They're not going to invade the United States of America, obviously. If anything, if it weren't for the fact that they had nuclear missiles, the United States wouldn't be the one invading North Korea, because even China, North Korea's only friend at this time, even China's getting pissed off at North Korea because it keeps making all these baseless threats against the United States of America and China. No, not China, sorry, Japan. There's some, how can I forget? South Korea. They just basically hate on anything that doesn't have anything to do with the glorious communism. Now, you might be wondering what this all has to do with Homefront. Like I said, there's no way North Korea is ever going to invade the United States of America. There's not even a remote chance that they would. There's a chance that they would attack the United States for sure, but even their most farthest traveling missile is only going to go as far as to hit someplace like Hawaii, maybe even California, somewhere closer to the ocean. It's never going to hit the mainland. They never would. Now, they still could hit Seoul in South Korea, and obviously that would kill millions and millions and millions of South Koreans, and it would be a tragedy. It'd be a tragedy in the biggest sense of the word. But as far as United States of America goes, is what I was getting at, it's never going to happen. And the way the game doesn't make it as, I guess the word would be, poignant? I don't know if that's the right word to describe, but it doesn't focus on invasion as much as Red Dawn does. Homefront is a bit more respectful in that regard because it does actually put some effort into the exposition in the game, and it fleshes out the factors that led to the invasion. They're pretty stupid anyway, but at least it's nice that they're there. With Red Dawn, you don't get any of that. All you get is just a bunch of whining teenagers, and you get one of the most annoying protagonists ever in a movie, played by Josh Peck, and one of the worst actresses, Isabel Lucas, perform in that movie. The movie's just awful. Don't see it. So, the Juche ideology is what fascinates me. Not the communism of North Korea itself. I don't relate to communism at all. But as far as the Juche ideology goes, it's really fascinating to study. The idea of self-reliance. It reminds me of a group project that I'm doing right now in university. And I just don't like group projects in university. I despise them. I can't stand the fact of relying on someone to have the exact same schedule as me just so we can get some work done on a project. So as far as North Korea goes, I like the Juche ideology. It doesn't mean that I apply myself to Juche, but it's interesting to study. And even their culture itself of North Korea, their music, I guess there's not a whole lot else worth talking about North Korea. Their music, though, is fascinating. Even if it's all based on communism, it's still pretty fun to watch, or listen to, rather. Because if you've seen my Dead Rising Part 13 I said 13. Dead Rising Part 13 Infinity Mode, you will know that I posted It was a pretty weird video to begin with. It was my first Windows Movie Maker vid, and there was a little bit of a glitch at the end of the Korea bit, but it had, anyway, the Korea bit, it had a band called the Morindong Band. It's either Morindong or Morinbong. I say Morindong because that's how it's spelled on Wikipedia. Anyway, the song that they played in that video, my vid, was called "Let's Learn" or "Let's Study." It's either one of those two, and it's just really catchy. It really is. For North Korea standards, it's really catchy. The synthesizer sounded sweet, like ba 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 ba. I love that. I love that beat. It's a shame that that beat doesn't happen too much in that song. As far as Homefront, just by itself goes, the characters are pretty bland. Connor is the main character. Like, the guy you play, he's just an average Joe who's forced to follow Connor. Over the course of the game, I took to calling him Connor Christ, because really he's the guy who calls the show. He's the one who calls the shots on everything that goes on as far as the resistance goes. Everyone else is just there to follow him. And because he just seems to know everything about what's going on and how to approach everything, I just assumed he was a know-it-all and took to calling him Connor Christ. Rihanna, again, typical military chick. Hopper, meh. That's all I can say is meh. Boone, he was, at first I thought he was a jerk-off, but he turned out to be interesting, but we only saw him for like the first hour of the game. That was it. Really, the only people we're talking about in the game is your silent protagonist, which you play as, and Connor. I couldn't stand Connor, like, as the game progressed. Like, he just got more and more bitchy about certain things in the game, and I just didn't like having to follow his ass around. I prefer to have my own agenda when I'm in a single player game. And that's that. How long was this vlog? 22 minutes. I didn't think my vlog would be this short, actually. I thought it would be like twice as long. But there's really not a whole lot more for me to talk about as far as North Korea goes. I don't want to spend forever talking about North Korea, because if I did, that'd be just boring, and I'm about to fall asleep right now. So, future vlogs may or may not be this long. I hope it was somewhat interesting. I'm not, like I said, since this is my first vlog, I don't really know how they're supposed to work. I don't know if there's a unknown rule set that applies to vlogs. But anyway, I do want to bring an announcement though. My next game playthrough, I should note that I don't know if I didn't say this before, I started and I finished Homefront on the same day, which was today. This will probably be uploaded on a different day, so it's going to sound anachronous compared to the time that I filmed this and the time that it was actually uploaded. But anyway, my next game playthrough, having finished Homefront, once I'm finished uploading Homefront, will be Perfect Dark on Xbox 360. It's going to be pretty fun. I don't know if it'll be a perfect agent playthrough, or obtaining all the cheats, or finding multiplayer. I'm pretty sure there's no one playing multiplayer on Perfect Dark anymore, but I'm gonna check it out anyway. If not, there's always bots. There's always challenges to face bots against, so that should be fun. And my plan from this point on with my game playthroughs, they're going to be getting more and more obscure. Dead Rising and Homefront, most people have played. Perfect Dark, a lot of people have played, but not everyone had a Nintendo 64 growing up, so the audience is obviously going to go down for that. But My games that I'm gonna playing are gonna be more obscure. I'm gonna try to fit in more JRPGs in my channel. Dead Rising and Homefront are basically just an introduction. I picked Dead Rising because it's one of my favorite games this generation. It's just awesome in every way. And Homefront, like I said, I'm interested in North Korean culture. So the game itself was pretty mediocre. The gameplay, fairly standard FPS stuff. Characters weren't terrible aside from maybe Connor, but they weren't really memorable in any way. The graphics, I've seen worse, but I've seen way better. The game's just really average in every way. It's not terrible, but it's not stupendous either. It just sits right in that middle line. It doesn't move anywhere at all. But yeah, Perfect Dark is going to be sweet. It's going to be really, really, really fun, and I look forward to replaying it. I might find all the cheese in all the levels in Perfect Dark as well, just so it's something to do in the game. So hopefully this vlog was somewhat interesting. I'm not really sure what my next vlog is going to be, but when something does come up in my head, I'm sure that I'll be talking about it. So until then, stay tuned for more vlogs, and stay tuned for Perfect Dark.